Good afternoon, everybody. Please mute your mic as we will commence the first debate. Ms. Joelle Roya would be our timekeeper for this debate. She would indicate your start and end times by raising her hand. Please wait until you see her hand raised to begin speaking. Presiding over the first debate would be Madam Speaker Prasad.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to introduce the first topic for discussion. Leaders are born, not made. We'll be having the proposition Team Huns versus opposition team, the chosen one. We will now start with the opening speech by the Prime Minister, Chirby.
Good day, everyone. My name is Nazifa Rajna Singh, and I will be doing the introduction for Leaders Are Born and Not Made. So, first off, what is a leader? From researching and multiple definitions found about a leader, it is clear that a leader is none other than someone whose duty is to guide others into achieving a common goal. A leader paves the way for others by setting examples and creates an environment that makes their team members feel involved in the process. Leaders also have the drive to push and motivate others in situations that are disadvantageous or discouraging. A leader also thinks strategically and ensures that all resources at his or her disposal are at use to ensure that a positive outcome is obtained from unfavorable circumstances. It is said that leaders are born with basic leadership skills, and these skills are improved through learning from others and experiences. But you may wonder, why are leaders with those traits not obtained from experience, instead being born with? Well, there is clear evidence that proves that leadership is therefore something you are born with. One of the pieces of evidence that supports this was an observation and research found that suggests leaders are noticed when they are still very young and are first recognized in the schoolyards during their childhood. It was observed that there were kids who are consistently ready to take command while in school and display their leadership skills effortlessly. These child leaders are distinguished by their desire for adventure and how quickly they think whilst they have to overcome objections that are placed in front of them, and how they are always ready to take responsibility, such as being a class monitor or class prefect, which is clear evidence that these young leaders are born and not made. This belief is also supported by the great man's theory, which suggests that great leaders are born with all the essential internal characteristics such as intelligence, social skills, charisma, and confidence. Two theories that support the leaders being born are the contingency theory and the relationship theory. So, the contingency theory has a relationship with chair theory in supporting the assertion that great leaders are born. According to the theory, the quality of leadership is dependent on the environment where leadership is practiced. It is inborn traits which make leaders respond to different types of environments. For instance, a leader who is adaptable would express good leadership skills regardless of whether their followers are responsive or not. Therefore, in order for a leader not to be greatly influenced by the environment of operation, he should be adaptive to different environments, a trait which a leader is normally born with. The relationship theory focuses on the relationship connecting followers and leaders, since it is the responsibility of leaders to inspire and motivate their followers. They will need to have the right traits in them and social traits that are inborn, and they are had to be instilled through training. Being social is a trait which is crucial in forming good working relationships between leaders and their followers. The two theories that were provided are clear evidence of leadership traits being recognized from young. Only proves none other than leaders are born and not made. Thank you so much.
We will now break for intermission.
Good afternoon. The House will now recommence.
We will now be continuing with the first main speech by the opposition leader, Queen.
Special good evening, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Presiding Officer, as well as distinguished guests. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the members of Parliament here today. I am the opposition leader, the Queen, here to debate on the matter, leaders are born not made. My members consist of the Rook, the Knight, and the Bishop. Madam Speaker, it is my honor to present to this honorable House that leaders are made and are not born. Can it be said that if you are not born with leadership traits and characteristics, you cannot develop them later? And how do you even know if you possess these traits if you never experience a leadership position or situation? For many years, this question, are leaders born or made, or even can leadership be developed or do leaders need to be genetically blessed, has been raised. I am here to say that leaders are made, not born. While yes, many individuals may say that specific persons are born with leadership traits, the leadership gene, and being a leader is natural and easier to them than others, these same traits can be developed and learned by ordinary individuals. Madam Speaker, persons who are naturally influential may be described as born leaders, but does that mean influencing is an innate skill that leaders must possess or be born with? No, it doesn't. This means that those who do not possess the skill have to obtain it in other possible ways. Leadership can be learned and developed through many ways, such as mentorships, programs, hands-on experience, and courses. Madam Speaker, an article by Eric Giger displays the Great Man theory formulated by Thomas Carlyle. This theory was used to describe leaders who radically shaped and impacted society, where he argued that leaders with incredible leadership qualities rose to the top. The theory was developed in the 1840s and it gave the impression that great leaders are born and society is formed around them. Critics, however, have responded to this theory and have stated that there is no real actual data supporting this theory. Leaders are made by societies more than leaders form societies. Leaders are made, not born. Having said that, some key traits of leaders include confidence and being able to succeed under pressure. Confidence is a trait with which most successful leaders have in common, as confident leaders believe in themselves and their visions, which inspire their followers to do the same. Of course, confidence is not something that leaders are born with. It is a trait that is acquired and developed. Succeeding under pressure is a very common skill of many great leaders, and it is the ability to maintain composure and lead effectively when faced with stressful situations. This may seem as a skill that comes naturally rather than one that can be learned because, to be honest, how we respond to pressurized situations is often instinctive, but the skills that leaders use to utilize to succeed under pressure can be learned. Madam Speaker, the reasons why leaders are made are firstly, there is not one type of leader. If leadership was to be primarily about nature, wouldn't researchers have the ability to plot out the right mix of communication skills, intellect, strategic thinking, and the exact spot on the chart between introversion and extroversion to identify the next great man or woman? They cannot do that because we have all seen effective leaders that are very different from each other and handle certain situations in specific ways. Are persons really born leaders? If you say yes, does this mean that introverts and persons of average social intelligence, or those of us who are not particularly empathic, will not make good leaders? Certainly not. It has been shown that introverts make great leaders due to the fact that they are simply the best listeners. You never stop learning. We all know leadership is something that can be learned. It is not something that you can simply inherit. Yes, many individuals may have seen great leadership traits in the leaders around them, but think about it. Do you actually inherit it, or do you learn and develop these traits by observation? The well known business coach Hugo Hedgie says true leaders ensure they continue to develop their leadership throughout their careers through learning and development materials and activities. Madam Speaker, the major points I keep raising is that leadership is developed, leadership is learned. To conclude, leaders are made, not born. Development is a key factor in persons becoming leaders. Leadership is something that can be learned, where leadership traits can also be learned and developed. If leaders were reborn, do you think courses such as leadership and ethics would exist? Thank you for your time.
We will now break for intermission.
Good afternoon. I'll now call the House back to order once again.
We will now be continuing, but with the first rebuttal by the Vice Prime Minister, Yuchi.
Hi, is everyone hearing me?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good evening, everyone. I am the Prime Minister, Yurchi, and I will be doing the honors of voicing the first rebuttal for leaders being born and not made. First of all, referring to my opposition leader, let us not confuse leader with leadership. There is a significant difference between the two terms. A leader is someone who, and leadership is the ability to. With the recent resurgence and popularity of trait theories of leadership, it is timely to consider the genetic determination of the multiple factors comprising the leadership construct. It is no secret that everyone around you each has a different thinking strategy. Individual differences in personality traits have been found to be moderately to highly heritable. This is a study about nurture versus nature. And so it follows that if there are reliable personality trait differences between leaders and non leaders, then there may be a heritable component to these individual differences. Some leaders are born great, whereas leaders achieve greatness. Do you see the difference I was referring to now? To say that leaders are made is probably the most delusional statement to be said by man. It is only fair for me to go on and prove why. Before we get into the specifics, you have to truly understand what a leader is and what they are required to do. Let me just tap back into what my colleague Natifa stated in the introduction, where she said a leader is someone whose duty is to guide others into achieving a common goal. There's far more to it, realistically speaking. Born leaders tend to have a sense of originality that no one is able to copy. It's more or less of a personality if you think about it. Yes, you can mimic someone, but would the results be the same? I can start by giving you guys a few relatable examples to make it easier. Now, I'm sure many of us are aware of a few born leaders, iconic to say the least. Some of these leaders have made core history from controversial, memorable events. Martin Luther King. He was an African American Baptist minister and activist who became the most visible spokesman and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. He was the leader of his church. He was the youngest man to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in his time. He was empowering, focused, and empathetic, all qualities of an effective leader. Then we have great people like Mahatma Gandhi, Indian lawyer, politician, social activist, and writer who became the leader of the nationalist movement against the British rule of India. As such, he became to be considered the father of his country. He possessed the determination to excel, born, not made. This may have been the most favorite or commendable, but if you focus on the background aspects, you will realize the connection. Adolf Hitler. He was the leader of Germany's Nazi party when one of the most powerful and notorious dictators of the 20th century. Whether we like it or not, he indeed was a leader. They may not be for the best reasons, but he held certain characteristics of a powerful leader. Now that we have a general knowledge of the characteristics of a powerful leader, it is 60% proven by the NDA of Team Reitman associations in the United Kingdom that only 30% of the population is born with those said personality traits and characteristics. According to recent studies, more than 14,000 teens has been studied and surveyed by the Harvard University and School of London College Board for any genetic similarity which would have a stronger. And what do you know? They found a common gene in 1989, the RS4950. This is a DNA sequence with the tendency for people to be more or less likely to become a strong-minded leader. In 2013, the American Psychological Association's Journal of Applied Psychology followed up with some research where they concluded that neural networks, also known as the neurological network system, located in the frontal lobes of the human brain, are in fact different from any regular or common human, making it almost a fact that leaders are born and not made. In 2012, the University of Melbourne, based in Australia, researched that born leaders have influence on their followers and are trustworthy by showing empathetic traits. After conducting a general survey, they found a genetic connection with human DNA cells within the human brain. This is when they came to the realization that both research information go hand in hand with the RS4950 genetic gene. Coincidence? I think not. Born leaders have more brain matter controlling decision making and matter control. The environment does not give them the promoted traits, however, they can amplify their power. True leaders know and understand that they are born for greatness and to help others find their power as well. This concludes my case for why leaders are born and not made. Thank you for listening.
We will now take break for intermission.
I will now call the House back to order with one slight adjustment. I would be raising my hand for start and end times.
We will now be continuing with the first rebuttal by the Vice Opposition Leader, Knight.
Good evening, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, presiding officers, as well as distinguished guests. Prime Minister Yuchi made a compelling argument that leaders are born, but history has taught us that the majority of leaders are indeed made. To insinuate that all leaders are born would mean that leadership is a genetical factor, but throughout history, not enough experimentation on humans have been done to back up this claim. Despite that, researchers have conducted studies using statistical analysis of variance between pairs of twins. According to the American Journal of Pharmaceutical Education, these studies have consistently concluded that only 30% of leaders that have been born are based on genetical components, while 70% of them are influenced by the environmental factors. So simply being born into a family of past leaders doesn't mean that you will be a great leader, because we are all different. Another study that also concluded this is the equal environment assumption. This assumption introduced the idea that both fraternal and identical twins who were raised in the same environment grow up with different perspectives on the world. The way they see, hear, and interpret things are not the same. Madam Speaker, we have seen time and time again that leaders of various backgrounds and various personality types have emerged throughout history. For example, Walt Disney. His father was an unsuccessful entrepreneur who failed at several business ventures, and his mother was a stay-at-home mom. If leadership was truly genetic, then he wouldn't have been able to create a successful career and a multi-billion-dollar company. Another example of this is Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a widely known example of a successful introverted leader. According to a MoTV article, researchers have suggested that extroverts are directly associated with obtaining leadership positions because of their bold and assertive nature. So if leaders are born, then all leaders should be extroverts. But Bill Gates isn't. Bill Gates and several other leaders are living proof that introverts are just as capable of being leaders. Introverts are known for being skilled critical thinkers and great listeners. If we were to think back to the traits of leaders that my colleague the Queen introduced, succeeding under pressure is one of the two main traits. By being a critical thinker, they will be able to create the best solution for a situation, and by listening and reflecting, they can create the influence because they make the people around them feel heard and understood. This is why, Madam Speaker, all leaders can't just be made. This is why all leaders can't just be born. They are made through experiences and by learning or enhancing their skills. Thank you.
We will now break for intermission.
I will now call the House back to order once again.
We'll be continuing with the second rebuttal or conclusion by the Honorable Member Bahadur.
Good evening, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the esteemed audience. I am the Honorable Member Badur, and I will be doing the honors of the second rebuttal for leaders being born and not made. It's factual that there are some qualities we inherit and others that we shape from our own life experiences. It's only human. Leaders aren't conceived differently from anybody else that is born, but as we know, most things cannot be created without using the right material. It is easy to identify a born leader from a very young age. The way they react in certain situations, and how well they can control themselves. Everyone has emotions, but how you can control them tells a big part about you. Something as simple as analyzing their behavior in a playground or in a classroom, seeing how they cope in different altercations, being able to de-escalate a heated situation. Young leaders can also be identified from the connection they have with their peers and the influence they have on others around them. You may ask, what are leadership qualities that we are born with that cannot be learned? One of the most important and very common qualities in young leaders is raw energy. As we all know, leaders, like anyone at the top of their game, require a lot of energy. This is what helps them fuel their ambition to stay awake and focus on those late nights and wake up early mornings. This usually results in them being more determined, hardworking, and having the ability to outlast their opponents. Many of us think that we need the necessary qualifications or need to be educated to be an effective leader. This, Madam Speaker, is where our opposition is mistaken. Some of us naturally have the leadership qualities, such as charisma and influence, shown in many great leaders. As my colleague mentioned, Adolf Hitler. It's a known fact that he didn't have a positive intentions while he reigned leader over the Nazi Party. But there's no denying his accomplishments had a major impact on history. He was a poor student, not even graduating from high school, but his natural leadership qualities helped him become one of the most charismatic public speakers, inspiring the lives of many Germans. This finalizes my part in his second rebuttal, and I will be handing the mic over to my colleague, the Honourable Member Orlock, to conclude.
Good day, Madam Speaker and members of the House. In conclusion, to be a leader, you have to have certain qualities, and these qualities are instilled in an individual from birth. Extensive scientific researches and clear-cut historical leaders who noticed their given gift of leadership and went on to create history for the better or worse should be a clear enough indication that leaders are indeed born and not made.
We will now break for intermission.
I will now call the House back to order once again.
We'll be continuing with the second rebuttal or conclusion by the Honorable Member Bishop.
Good evening, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Presiding Officer, and distinguished guests. I would like to take this opportunity to do the second rebuttal to leaders are born, not made. And I would like to reiterate that leaders are in fact made and not born. Please allow me to bring back the point that Opposition Leader Queen presented of leadership being a skill. Madam Speaker, the ability to effectively lead, motivate, and direct a group of people requires a very complex set of skills. One is not born with a skill. In fact, these skills are mostly acquired through education, experiences, and self development, as well as subsequent training and continuous practice. Leadership is, in fact, a skill. Unlike every other skill, this too must be learned and developed over time. Now, Madam Speaker, I would like to draw your attention to the key word used in the points that have been presented by my colleagues earlier, and that is development. Development is certainly key in leadership, and good leaders develop through a never ending process of self study, education, training, and education, as was previously mentioned. It cannot be stressed enough that leadership skills are achieved through development, and this takes time, which is not something one can simply be born with. Therefore, Madam Speaker, it is with these points that I will strongly agree with Opposition Leader Queen and Vice Opposition Leader Knight that leaders are made and not born. Thank you for your time. Unfortunately, Honorable Member Rook is unable to present her part of the conclusion, so I would like to request to speak in her place.
Permission granted.
Thank you. So, Madam Speaker, as I conclude this debate, I would like to thank the members of this House for staying as respectful as they possibly can while my team presented to you that leaders are made and not born. We have learned that although persons can be born with leadership traits that were passed down through generations, most have developed these traits naturally due to environments they were in and the people they grew up with over time. These persons can inspire those around them with little effort because of the way they carry themselves and show confidence in what they say and they believe. There are different ways to develop leadership skills, such as through education, training, practice, and even observing how leaders speak and portray themselves. Good leaders have many traits that include being confident, influencing others, and working and succeeding under pressure. And these are just some of the traits that make a great leader. There has been very little research to show who would be the next leader based on their communication skills and whether they are introverts or extroverts, because every leader handles situations differently from each other, whether it may be managing details, being strategic, or maximizing value of people. It is also shown that introverts can be great leaders because they are observant and great listeners. These leaders work with their team for the benefit of them and their accomplishments. Madam Speaker, as Vice Opposition Leader Knight explained earlier, some studies show that the majority of leaders were influenced by environmental factors, which means that being born into a family of past leaders does not necessarily mean you will be, in fact, a great leader. Personality types and communication preferences are ways that will make leaders differ from each other. Most leaders who are successful do not have leadership traits from a young age and were introverts, but they develop these traits from experience because they are critical thinkers and great listeners. These are why, Madam Speaker, that all leaders cannot be born but are made. They are made to bring hope to those who do not believe that they can be great leaders one day. Thank you for your time.
Okay, this will be the end of the topic of discussion. Leaders are born, not made. We will now take break for assessment.